with how the Jeffrey Epstein scandal continues to not only spiral out of control of Donald Trump, the White House, and their political operation and allies, but is really feeding a larger question over whether the famously loyal MAGA base is, in a sense, over. Is this a new chapter where post-Epstein, Donald Trump cannot just count on this kind of what has been very loyal support on most issues, most talking points, most defenses, particularly in that new digital podcast space we've been covering? This is now beyond D.C. politics or MAGA. The mainstream discourse, the way we understand what's happening in our country and culture, includes seriously disturbing questions about what Trump's own podcast allies call a cover-up. Now there's pressure from a Republican senator and heat from Democrats. Now look at Trump's reality. A crowd on hand for a punk rock show, the Dropkick Murphys. We've covered before how things matter in culture and what we might call daily life, separate from the, quote, news or D.C. politics. And you can see that you don't need to explain this story to the country. Rock fans, other folks who might not be glued to old school linear television, they know exactly what is going on and the questions looming about this long relationship between Trump and Epstein. At the show, they dedicated a song called, quote, "First Class Loser," to the president.
This next song is dedicated to a guy who wears orange makeup, his pants and his diapers, rapes women. It's called First Class Loser! He's a jerk, he's a victim that we despise, but you can't just tune him out because he's too loud to ignore. When he shows up at your house, you kill the lights and hit the floor. He's a first class loser. He's a first class loser.
Now, this is going around, and it's not just in the world of politics. Outlets that focus on music and culture and sometimes kind of look away from the daily D.C. stories see this as a big music story. Rolling Stone, with the headline you see, Dropkick Murphys make Trump their honorary, quote, "first class loser" during Warped Tour set. HuffPo referring to them as the iconic punk band ripping Trump through a song that people can sing along to. As for the political nightmare, about half the country now thinks something that, again, this is polling, not proven, but they think that Trump is so suspicious on the story, the way he's been acting, the cover-up, the lies, the gaslighting, as Joe Rogan put it, that 46%, when asked by The Economist, with YouGov, a magazine and a website, say they think Trump could be involved in the Epstein crimes. Another 23% just say not sure. A third of Republicans now say Trump was involved or are not sure. Now, there is not a legal process that has found Trump culpable anyway involved in the very serious crimes that Epstein was both charged with when he died, that Maxwell and others were convicted of. Donald Trump has had other legal troubles. That's been well covered and well known. He admitted to certain things on the Access Hollywood tape in his words. But this is a sign of why it is so much larger than just the government portion. The government portion is a lot of folks thinking that Trump's administration has lied and acted shady about this. Then the history portion is that this happens to all swirl around an individual who was tied to many prominent people, not only Donald Trump, but Donald Trump was one of them. Republican Senator Kennedy going after what I mentioned there, the first part, the governing choices of the Trump administration on this important case.
Over recess, do you worry at all that this Epstein issue is going to be a distraction from talking about the benefits of the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Well, the Epstein mess is already a distraction. And it's not a political issue for me. It's a moral issue. If adults aren't going to protect our kids, who is? The Justice Department has dug up more snakes than they could kill, okay, in terms of their handling of this. I think we're beyond the point where they can say, look, trust me, there's nobody else. Now the American people want to see receipts.
At the top Republican senator, he's talking about Attorney General Pam Bondi. He uses the term Justice Department maybe to soften the blow, but he's talking about what they're doing now and what they misled on now, and saying that you can't trust someone who offers receipts and then hides them. That's this Trump DOJ. It's not 5 years ago. Daily Beast reports Trump officials worried that the scandal is growing as Trump's crowd size shrinks. The Post says Trump's advisors are not under any impression that the storm has passed. Here's one quote from a White House official. I wouldn't say it's blown over. Very small segment of the base. It's never going to die down no matter what. A kind of a fait accompli attitude about this. Part of this is about what you think happened. And part of this is about the process of information, of learning. That's why some people have taken a kind of schadenfreude or gotten a kick out of so many MAGA fans, supporters, and big, loud voices suddenly sounding like every other critic of Donald Trump over the last many years. Critical of the lies, critical of the stonewalling, critical of the very extreme way that Donald Trump does propaganda. We have never had a modern president, for example, lose an election. He clearly lost. He was the loser of that election in 2020, then lie about it forever and be a part of a rally that led to a sedition crime spree. So people have gotten used to or normalized maybe how often there are these lies coming out of Donald Trump's mouth. And in the MAGA side, they have a playbook where they attack other people. You know about it. They shoot the messenger. They attack the press. We know all about that. But now they are the messenger in the press. And they, Megyn Kelly and Joe Rogan and others, don't like it. And Senator Kennedy's calling out the lies. And so we're in this interesting sort of through the looking glass moment, even apart from the important underlying sex crimes, where you're seeing a very different reaction to the same old Trump. They just don't like it happening to them. So they're asking for information or demanding interviews. Well, imagine that. A politician and president who's waged war on the press quite blatantly is now facing calls from his own side to be honest and to engage with journalists or release the darn evidence. Republican committee chair in the House has not signed the subpoena that apparently they wanted to use to tell their side, their supporters, they were going after the information. Of course, if you haven't signed it, what's the holdup? He's required by committee rules to do so, and so we don't know when that's going to happen. Again, the Washington games we've told you about. Someone wants to get out of the way of the angry anti-Epstein mob, who's a Republican, so he talks about a subpoena, but that doesn't do the thing. And I want to be clear with you. We know about this because of the work of reporters like this story at the Washington Post, who are going into the details, not just playing a soundbite of him on TikTok claiming he's going to get to the bottom of it if he's not. And that takes work. That takes investigative work. In the Senate, Democrats are trying to invoke a fairly obscure law to force a different way to get these Epstein materials out of the Trump DOJ, which is very clearly hiding them despite the many now broken promises to release them. Senate Homeland Security Committee has a means to get information from the feds. No comment yet on whether that will add to the pressure or how the White House will deal with it. So we have an uproar. We have Democrats here clearly joining this. Some of them have a long record of looking for transparency on this issue. Others may just be doing what you do in politics, which is seeing an issue that is splintering the Republican Party and jumping in. You have Republicans breaking with Donald Trump on this issue in the Congress more than any other this year, more than the big mega bill, where some of them said they didn't like what he was doing, but they didn't use their powers or votes to stop it, more than ICE, where we've seen some libertarians say it's bad to have these kind of federal agents and federal powers used to excess, more than grocery prices and inflation, where Donald Trump has just completely fallen down on the job and not done the thing that he said all last year was so important, take every possible step to lower inflation. The trade war is certainly not doing that. And we have punk bands using their language, protest anthems of 2025, applied to Donald Trump with that flickering video in the background that I showed you of Trump and Epstein, which brings us back to what is a conflict of interest, not necessarily legally ever a crime, but a conflict of interest that this now deceased sex trafficker had so many social ties to this president who is now overseeing the rejection of the transparency that he promised about someone who used to be his party mate. And, you know, I'm a First Amendment guy, so everyone can say everything. But not everyone who's ever said everything should be running every investigative agency, right? These are different skill sets. You yourself have stood up to or clashed with
Absolutely.
Dan Bongino, and I want to show some of that as well as how he sounds these days, because the job is getting to him.
Sure.
Give up everything for this. I mean, you know, my wife is struggling. If you think we're there for tea and crumpets, well, I mean, Cash is there all day. We share it. Our offices are linked. He turns on the faucet. I hear it. He's there he gets in at like 6 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't leave till 7 at night. You know, I'm in there at 7:30 in the morning. I stare at these four walls all day in D.C., you know, by myself, divorced from my wife. Not divorced, but I mean separated, divorced. And it's hard. I mean, you know, we love each other, and it's hard to be apart.
So as he says there, these government jobs, especially something as big as being a senior FBI official, turns out you work all day. You work all day every week, sometimes, although you might have to work nights and weekends.
You don't sound very sympathetic.
I am observing that he seems genuinely surprised and thus shares on public TV. This isn't him ranting to a friend, shares on TV as if it's still a revelation. These are hard jobs, and they're perhaps different than what he was suited for.
There is no doubt but that the glamour of that job, basically the top cop in the country, was alluring to Bongino, who had been a failed congressional candidate after all, and a very ambitious guy. And also, when you talk about the grand scheme of things and the mega universe and all the rest of it, it's one thing when you have to actually do the job and someone is missing in Nebraska or there's something else in Wyoming, and it's a really hard job. And I really felt for him. I saw that live, and I worried that he was coming apart at the seams. And, I always thought, if anything, we clashed heads in one run of Hannity, 30 of 31 days, had that kind of emotion.
Is he up to this job?
I think that he has a good heart, and easy for me to hate him, but I don't. Is he up for the job? I don't know. Technically speaking, I believe that, it is a very complicated job. It's a job that you have to play well with others.